Hey, I'm Tom Neal again at Valley Cycle Center in Winchester, Virginia. So we did a quick video the other day when I was here and had picked up this new 2017 Kawasaki X300 Versys. And I was making mention that I think this is the most versatile of the Versys line. And we had a lot of noise that day, and so we decided to come back and do it. And now that I'm knocking on the door of 600 miles, I thought I would give you some additional information and tell you some other things that I've learned in riding the bike. So let me start with the fact that I was talking about the range of this bike with a 4.5 gallon gas tank. And most of the competition you're going to find are not only 250cc bikes, this being a 300, but they have smaller gas tanks which affect the range. And so I like the fact that Kawasaki took the time to care about that, because when you look at curb weight, you have to remember part of curb weight is the size of the gas tank, and most of the time we're running around with half the gas in it anyway, so the curb weight's always less. But I'd rather have the place to put the fuel rather than have, like I was mentioning with the 310R BMW that's coming out, it's going to have a 2.9 gallon gas tank. So let's see what it means. Well, yesterday I took this bike out and I rode 305 miles. And I want to come back and address the range issue because I thought this bike would go about 250 miles. And I'm not wrong, but it's interesting to see through its break-in period how that's happening. So what ended up happening, I got on the morning, I went 200 miles, and I was purposely trying to make sure that I'd be near gas stations when this happened. Although I did split lane, highway, interstate, back twisty roads. I did all kinds of ridings. I was not trying to save fuel. I was not trying to waste fuel. And I looked at the range indicator on this bike, which happens when the engine's on. It's on the lower right-hand side of the dash. And then I was watching the fuel gauge. So the fuel gauge, which has bars, which drop off one at a time down to the last one, which starts flashing, started off very optimistic. And as mileage was ticking down on the range, it stayed pretty good. But in the end, I have to tell you, the range not only ended up being correct, it ended up being the more optimistic of the two. The gas gauge became a little pessimistic, because right as that last bar on my gas gauge started flashing, I was on the last bar for a long time, but it said I had 46 miles to go. So in 2 miles, I pulled into a gas station, so it said I had 44 miles to go. And the light was flashing, and after filling up, I found out that I had gone 54 miles to a gallon on that tank, and by doing that computation and finding out how much gas I used, which was about 3.6 gallons, the 4.5 gallon range that was left ended up computing out to 43.3 miles that I could go at 54 miles to a gallon. Well, the range said I could go 44, so that's pretty close. So when you're riding this bike and you get down to that last bar, don't freak out. The range actually is pretty correct. It'll help you not freak out and look for a gas station too early. When I got back on the bike, I rode another 100 miles, but this time I was on the throttle. I was trying to purposely waste gasoline. Now remember, I told you this is a new bike and it's breaking in. And what happens in time with these engines is they free up because they're tight in the beginning. And the other important part of this is, from a gas mileage standpoint, is that yesterday's ride was all done in between the temperatures of 40 and 62 degrees, which means in the summertime I'm going to get better gas mileage. Look it up. You get better gas mileage when the temperatures are warm. But by the time I got back and I hit the gas station right at 100 miles to fill it up when I got home, it turns out that mileage turned out to be 55 miles to a gallon. So I'm going to say right now that the low end of this bike's capability is 55 miles to a gallon, and I believe that'll get better. A couple of things that I didn't talk about with this bike the last time or at least one major thing, is it was funny about, well, several years ago when I picked up my Ninja 300, I did a video review for the Kawasaki rep, and I told them, you know, it's kind of funny, one of the things I think would be really neat to have on this bike was a slipper clutch. Now for you all that don't know, slipper clutches are used in racing, so when you're downshifting, it keeps you from locking up the rear end. Think of it in a way of like ABS braking for downshifting. And I was really kind of kidding around because this was a sub $6,000 motorcycle. They're not going to put an expensive slipper clutch on it. Guess what? They did. So this bike has a slipper clutch. One of the great things about a slipper clutch, though, and maybe come a little bit closer, I'll show you, is the action pull of the clutch itself. For those of you that have small hands, look at me, and I'm just using one finger to actuate this clutch. So that is all a product of having a slipper clutch on it. It's very easy to use. As far as the other lever on this bike, the brakes, a lot of you all might look at the size of these brakes and think it's under-braked. To me, it's got perfect size brakes on it. ABS works really well, and I like that a lot. Another point that I want to mention is that Kawasaki also put a 130 rear on this bike. You'll notice that the Ninja 300 has a 140 rear. I really applaud them for doing this. This bike handles so well. Narrow tires handle better than wide tires. The only reason for a wide tire on the back of a bike is horsepower. This doesn't have a lot, but still, it's plenty capable of going fast. I was on highway speeds yesterday, cracking off 80 miles an hour like it's no problem. And the other thing I mentioned to you all in the first video was about the gear ratio. I probably will change the rear sprocket on this bike. I think it's geared just a little bit low. For most of you who are experienced, you'll find that when you are riding in 6th gear at 60 miles an hour, you're right just over like 7,100 RPMs. I'd like to see that drop a little bit. Best way to do it is change the rear sprocket. Other than that, listen, Valley Cycle Center, I bought a lot of motorcycles from these people. They're great people. I'm not an employee of the company, I'm a customer, and I'm talking about today about a bike that I actually own, but I think you should come see them if you live in the area. Lower Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Virginia. It's really worth coming to see them. And the X300 is a great bike. Thank you, Kawasaki, for making it.